optimal state of consciousness, a state where you feel your best and perform your best. More specifically, the term refers to those moments when you are so focused on the task at hand that everything else disappears. Your mind goes quiet and your actions happen with ease. Your sense of self vanishes and your sense of time distorts, either speeds up or occasionally slows down. In basketball, you'll often hear players refer to this state as going unconscious. In other sports, it is often referred to as being in the zone. These terms are all different ways of describing what researchers referred to as flow states. In this video, we will be diving into the science of flow states and how to enter these states more often. During flow, we experience something called transient hypofrontality, which is another way of saying that we experience less activity in the prefrontal cortex of our brain. You can think of the prefrontal cortex as the part of our brain responsible for thinking and planning. During flow, the prefrontal cortex quiets down to allow the other parts of our brain responsible for skill execution and focus to function better. When our prefrontal cortex quiets down, we no longer think, worry, or hesitate over our actions. We are free to perform automatically and effortlessly. Now that you understand what's going on in your brain during flow, I'm going to give you strategies that will help you reach these states more often. The most important idea to keep in mind is that focus drives flow. In other words, if you want to experience flow states, you need to focus. All flow triggers stem from this fundamental idea. Stephen Kotler and researchers at the Human Genome Project have identified psychological triggers that bring our focus into the present moment and increase our chances of experiencing flow states. The first trigger is that a balance must be struck between the challenge of the task and the skill of the performer. If the task is too easy, we will feel bored. If the challenge is too far outside of our comfort zone, we will feel anxious. We are most likely to experience flow when we are highly skilled, yet we feel challenged by the competition. Another flow trigger is that we need to quiet our minds and be intensely focused in the present moment. Mindfulness meditation can help us achieve this. Mindfulness meditation is essentially a workout for our brains. It involves bringing and sustaining our attention in the present moment and refocusing our attention when our mind wanders. With consistent practice, mindfulness training can retrain and strengthen our attention systems to sustain deep focus. I will be making in-depth videos about meditation in the future, as it is arguably the best way to train your mind. Sports psychologist Michael Gervais shares additional preconditions that help us enter flow states more often. Michael tells us that getting to that state is incredibly challenging. It's not like we can just wake up and say, "Today I'm going to be in flow." It requires a fundamental commitment to embrace risk, matched by the required skills to thrive in those conditions. First, you have to have an accurate appraisal of your skills. You have to be able to correctly match your skills to the challenge at hand. This condition brings us back to the idea of a growth mindset, which I described in a previous video. Essentially, in order to develop a more accurate appraisal of your skills, you must first believe that you have the capacity to improve. This belief will then make you more open-minded and willing to receive accurate information about your skills, even if it's unflattering. This will then allow you to balance your skills with the challenges you take on. Michael Gervais also tells us that getting comfortable with challenge is essential to training the mindset skills that trigger flow. And to get comfortable with challenge, you first need to trust yourself and your abilities. There's an equation for trust. Time times behavior equals trust. You earn the ability to trust yourself by doing hard things over a long period of time. So, to summarize everything, the psychological triggers are 1. Challenge skill ratio that is balanced or just slightly outside our comfort zone. 2. Complete concentration in the present moment. Meditation is the best strategy that you can use to cultivate this skill, as it helps strengthen your attention systems to sustain deep focus. And the additional preconditions to these psychological triggers are commitment to embrace risk, commitment to develop the sport-specific skills needed to thrive in these conditions, Having a growth mindset. This will enable you to develop a more accurate assessment of your skills, and having a more accurate assessment of your skills will enable you to balance the skill to challenge ratio. And lastly, you need to develop trust in yourself and your abilities in order to get comfortable with challenges and taking risks. And the way to build this trust is by consistently doing hard things over a long period of time. In addition to these psychological triggers, there are also environmental triggers that drive us deeper into flow states. The environmental triggers are 1. Deep embodiment, which refers to the engagement of multiple sensory streams at once. The more sensory information that is present, the more your brain will need to focus to make sense of it all. Number 2, rich environment. This refers to having lots of novelty, complexity, and unpredictability in the environment. And number 3, high consequences. High consequences can include physical, mental, social, or emotional risks. The presence of environmental triggers is largely outside of our control. In some sports, such as extreme sports, they are more present than in others. This is why flow states are experienced relatively more often by extreme athletes. That being said, it is important to know that flow states are a spectrum experience, ranging from microflow to macroflow. Microflow is another way of saying a lighter experience of the state, which includes some, but not all, of the characteristics. Macroflow is the full-blown experience, like I defined at the beginning of the video. The more flow triggers that are present, the more rich and intense your flow experiences will be. If the environmental triggers of flow are not highly present in your sport, you can increase the likelihood of experiencing flow by making use of the psychological triggers that I described earlier. For example, let's say you're a soccer player. The most important factor that you must focus on is your training. You must consistently engage in deliberate practice to develop a high level of skill. Developing a high level of skill will then enable you to match your skills with tougher competition and increase the likelihood of experiencing flow during your games. In addition to deliberate practice, you can use strategies such as meditation, visualization, or breathing exercises to bring your focus into the present moment. Research shows that there's a strong association between mindfulness and flow. The reason for this is straightforward. Mindfulness meditation clears our minds and strengthens our attention systems. This improves our ability to focus, and like I said earlier, focus drives flow states. Lastly, stay off your phone and avoid applications like Instagram and Snapchat. Your goal in the lead up to your games should be to have a clear and focused mind, something that many applications on your phone will disrupt. These strategies will help you focus and increase the likelihood of experiencing flow. I hope you learned something new. Subscribe to get the best strategies for optimal performance, and consider supporting the channel on Patreon if you would like to see more.